good day everyone. Welcome to another session of our webinar. So I'm your host for today. I am Fernando Singson Jr. I'm a developer, a software developer here in DNA Micro. So I'm going to talk about the separation of concerns in React. So now what is a separation of concern? So if we search it on Google, separation of concerns. It is defined as a design principle for separating a computer program into distinct sections such that each section addresses a separate concern. And also, what is a concern? So a concern is a set of information that affects the code of our computer program. So in relation to creating applications or front-end applications specifically using reactJS. So before we dive into the code, first let's identify what are the concerns that are involved in our application. So I personally identified 3 concerns. So the first one is the UI or the user interface. The next one is the logic, and then the last one is our data. So looking at these items, so how are these concerns related to React? So our UI is going to be the JSX. So in our code, this will be our JSX. So the UI part is responsible for displaying data and the user interface. And the next one is our logic. So for our logic, this is the handlers, these are the handlers or the functions in our application. So, and the last one is the data. So specifically in React, I identify the data as the state. And now looking at these items again, so this resembles a familiar pattern in software engineering. So I'm talking about the MVC pattern, so the model view controller pattern. So it is widely used, or this pattern is common along the software engineering. So the data part or the state represents our model, and our logic will be the controller. So this is the controller, and while the UI part represents the view. So what is the goal? What are we trying to achieve when we apply this principle in React? So now we have identified the concerns. Now our next goal is how do we separate them from each other in such a way that they don't clutter up in a same location or a single location. So I have created a simple project in reactJS. So I just use the create React app tool, so to bootstrap everything, just so we could dive in directly. And then I also prepared some implementations or methods on how do we achieve the separation in React, or how do we separate those concerns in React. So in this file, or in this component, I've created a simple to-do application, and in this basic implementation, I placed everything into a single file. So if we run it, so it looks something like this. So it's just a very simple to-do app. So you can add, say, eat, sleep, or anything that what you want. And you could also toggle it and then remove. So it works perfectly fine this scenario. But looking at the code, everything is in a single file. And then, so our goal is to separate these things. So the state here is our model, and then these handlers right here stands for the controller. And then the JSX part, or the markup, stands for the view. So everything is co-located. And then on the next method, I tried to apply the parent-child pattern, which has a container and a DOM component, or a presentational component. So I've created two more files, the form and the list. So the main file will be our container. So this will hold our state and our handlers. And as you can see, I just rendered the child components and passed the things that it needed via props. So, and now our UI part is more concise, and it doesn't hold any logic in it, but it is just gonna accept it via props. So any data that it will display, it will just receive from the props. And then, so this also works fine, but so we're not there yet with our goal to separate all of those concerns. So you still have your state and your handlers here, or the model and your controller, all in the same place. So I implemented another method. So I called it the reducer pattern, where I added a few more files and placed the UI part, or the UI components, into the components folder. And then I use the React hooks, so just to simplify things, because I was planning to use the React Redux and then the Saga for this, but it has too much boilerplate. But I just realized that React now offers this functionality with their hooks. So I'm going with the hooks. So I created a reducer. So I isolated the controller. So in this part right here, the controller, it is responsible for updating or accessing the model. So our model will be located in this part, the state. So it is our state, and then the view part is on its different location, which is the components folder. So the list and the form. So we managed to separate those things from each other, or I mean the concerns from each other. So yeah, this also works fine. But then what if we'll add another feature or functionality to our application? Let's say what application? Let's say you want the application to have a stop, start, and finish, or we'll be adding an application state. So how do we achieve this? If we're going to add this on our reducer pattern, somehow the reducer part or the controller will be affected, because if we try to mix up the logic between handling data state and application state, so it kind of creates it kind of couples up the what to call this the concern. So, or it mixes up the concern between handling data state and application state. So what I implemented on the last part is by using xstate. So I'm relatively new to xstate. I just learned it a few months back. And then the cool thing about implementing xstate in React is that you can separate, or you can specifically handle the application state of your application. I mean the application state of your project or application, and then you could also manage the data state. So to show this, I've got a simple config file for the xstate. So if you're not familiar with xstate, you could just read the documentations online. So so in this documentation. But for our project, I just implemented a very simple state machine to handle the application state of our project. So to demonstrate this method, I'm going to render the view. So let's say you have a start, stop, and a finish function that you just added to your application, and then if your application is not yet started, you will notice, in this demonstration, you will notice if the app is not yet started, you can type anything or submit the form whatsoever, because with the design of xstate, if you're not in the specific state, application state to do those actions, you're not. You're restricted, or you're what do you call this? If you're not in the state that allows those actions to be executed, nothing will happen. So if you click start, and then this will transition to the working state. So you can now type something in the text field and then submit it. But if we try to stop it, even if we click the remove or toggle checkbox and then type, you can't do anything. So this method adds another benefit in separating the concerns in reactJS, because you don't want to mix up the handling, or yeah, the handling of data state and your application state into a what you call into into the um, into the I mean, you don't want to handle those things all in just a on one place. As our in our case here, the reducer, so this or our controller. So you don't want to mix everything up in here. So and now this topic, the separation of concern in relation to reactJS, this is somewhat a subjective matter because reactJS is just a tool or a library that you will use to create user interfaces out of it. But unlike any framework like Angular, specifically Angular, you are bound to structure your files or create your features on a certain manner. So you have to follow some structure. But in the case of reactJS, you are free and it is flexible enough for you to create those components in your own way. So that is what I like about reactJS in the first place. But although it has some trade-offs along with it, because when you're part of a team and you're working on a project and your code is what do you call this so when you're working on a team, when you're part of a team and you're working on a project, and then you somewhat just write your code as how you want it to be without thinking of the possibility that other members will be taking over it at some point in the development stage of your project, and then it doesn't have any proper structuring in your component. So that introduces a problem, because first is that we want to create a component that is highly reusable, and then at the same time it has to be scalable. The scalability part is the most important thing in what it is an important thing in applying this principle, the separation of concerns, because a component can be at any given time, your component can be can change based on client requirements and based on the set features that or functionality that it has to perform. So maintaining a component that has a code where the code is cluttered up and it doesn't have any structure in it, so maintaining that will be kind of problematic. So these are just some of the methods on how you can achieve this principle or apply this principle into reactJS. Although I'm pretty sure there is more to it than this. So yeah, so that's it. So yeah, that's it. Okay. Masabtan ra ba you.